My name is Barbara. I'm 70 years old. Lie down. I live in Galveston, Texas, and I've been a seamstress my whole life. I've sewn wedding dresses, uniforms, cushions, even sofa covers. Every stitch I gave was with love, first for survival, then for hope. Now tell me, Montoni, what would you do if, one day, your own daughter-in-law screamed in your face that you were an old leech? Because that's what I heard. No. Inside the house I built with my hands, with my money, my sweat, my silence. I know. It seems unbelievable. But I heard that sentence. I didn't just feel angry. I felt something deeper, as if they had erased my entire history with a dirty and short sentence. Those words burned me like a hot needle entering my finger. If you've ever felt like someone has forgotten everything you've done, if it has already been treated as a burden, when in fact it has always been the pillar, so this story is yours too. I'll tell you how I went from abandonment to justice without raising my voice, without losing my composure, because sometimes the most elegant revenge, it's just going back to the place that has always been yours. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. When I parked my car that Friday afternoon and looked out the window of my beach house, something inside me collapsed. The garage was full of cars that weren't mine. Beer cans rolled across the lawn, and the voice that cut through the air like a razor came from the porch. "Why is that old leech here? We don't have room." It was my daughter-in-law's voice inside the house I built with my own hands. That phrase still echoes inside, as if my entire story had been spat out of my own home. But what Megan didn't know is that that moment would be the beginning of the end for her, and the rebirth of a woman she thought was defeated. If you've ever felt like you've been taken out of your place, if it ever hurt to be ignored within your own family, I ask you, stay with me until the end. And if this story touches your heart in any way, leave your affection with a like, subscribe here to the channel, and follow me, because telling this memory hurts, but it's lighter when I feel like I'm not alone. I remember exactly the day I stepped on that land for the first time. It was just sand, dry bush and wind cutting his face. A skinny stockbroker, wearing a straw hat and yellow teeth, looked me up and down and asked, "Oh, alone?" I told the chuckle, "Ma'am, what are you going to buy this for?" I smiled with my eyes and said, "Oh, to rest when life tires me too much." He laughed. "No, but I could already see the balcony, the coconut tree swaying, oh, the hammock in the corner. Oh, what for him was an abandoned lot, for me was a promise of peace. After James died, my world became too quiet. It was 32 years of marriage. He was a truck driver. He lived on the road. But when he came back, he brought me flowers, or bakery dream, and made me laugh at his stories with flat tires and broken radios. When he left, I didn't cry at the funeral. I cried at night, in the bathroom, with the tap running so Ryan wouldn't hear. I still needed to be strong. He was just a boy, Life didn't give me luxury, but it gave me needle and thread. Oh no, I sewed what I could. I made it godmother dress, school uniform, Bible cape. Sometimes I received it in chicken, in avocado. I was collecting coins in an envelope written future. It was for me, for the first time, when I was able to buy that land on Seawall Boulevard. I felt like I had won the lottery. And you know what I did first? I planted a coconut tree because he dreamed of shade and quiet. It was years of construction. I asked neighbors for help, bartered with a bricklayer in exchange for curtains for his daughter. Ryan helped me out in the summers. He was a good boy. She painted the walls with a small brush and said, "One day, this will all be yours, Mom." And I smiled. No, it, Mom. I had no lyrics, saying, "Why, oh, pal, no, my son, it will be ours. Every corner of that house has my soul. The blue tile of the kitchen I chose alone in a store in Houston after 3 buses. The sofa in the living room was second-hand, but I renovated it. I put floral fabric, firm, because I like things that last. In the hallway, there's a painting that I embroidered myself. Home is where peace lives. Home is where peace lives. That's what I believed. I remember the day I hung the last curtain. The wind was blowing lightly through the window, and I thought, not now. Yes, here I will grow old in peace. It was as if James was sitting there on the porch, and Ryan, still a boy, running in the backyard, with his feet dirty with sand. That house, it wasn't just a place. It was my body after the pain, my nest after the morning, my voice after the silence. And that's why it hurt so much, what happened next. I ask you, how does someone have the courage to enter such a sacred place and treat it as if it were anything? No. Sometimes I find myself thinking, was it worth it? Doesn't so much surrender, so much sacrifice, always end like this, with us being forgotten in the end? But then I take a deep breath and remember what I built with love. No one steals without leaving a trace. If you've ever had something precious disrespected by someone in your own family, if you have ever felt that your history has been trampled on by those you should honor, comment below so I know I'm not alone. You can write I've lived it. It's true, or just what a strength. Sometimes a small word has the power to heal large wounds, because what they did to me afterwards, that left a scar that still burns today. But at that time, I had no idea what was coming. The house was ready. I had my little corner. The coconut tree gave shade, and the picture on the wall kept reminding me that there was my peace. I just didn't know that. Years later, I would be greeted on my own balcony with cries of contempt. And the worst? Screams coming from within my own family. But you'll understand better when I tell you, which I found in the garden that Friday. And what I heard from my daughter-in-law's mouth, with my foot still in the door. It was Memorial Day holiday. and I just wanted a weekend of peace. I hit the road early, with my old radio playing songs that kept me company. I arrived in Galveston around 10 in the morning. The sea shone and the wind smelled of salt and memories. But when I turned the corner of my street, my heart was surprised. The front of the house was unrecognizable. 3 huge cars were parked at the entrance, one with a dented bumper touching my coconut tree. In third, one autumn on a kite. My lilies were trampled on, young toys strewn about, plastic trash dancing on the lawn. My garden, which has always been my pride, looked like a roadside motel backyard. I opened the gate slowly, swallowed the dry anger in my throat, and walked toward the door. And it was there, even before touching the doorknob, was that I saw Megan, with my favorite apron on my body, the one I embroidered by hand, with very small cross-stitch, a sprig of lavender on the chest. She laughed, stirring a pot, as if she were the owner of the house. Inside, no. The loud sound of electronic music drowned out any conversation. The smell of burnt fat came from the kitchen, mixed with cheap perfume and warm beer. I entered without making a fuss. I walked around the living room and saw her mother sitting on my floral sofa, with her feet dirty on the coffee table. When he saw me, he raised his eyebrow and said in a slurred voice, "Ah, so that's the famous Barbara," as if I was a ridiculous legend that she had finally met. No one stood up. No one smiled. Megan looked at me as if I had arrived uninvited to the wrong party. Neither hello, nor how are you. I know, Cassane. Why, just that corner look, loaded with contempt. I stood at the entrance of the room, trying to understand what was happening. My gaze was sweeping the room. The picture on the wall was crooked. My crocheted towel on the floor. Soda cans on the open Bible on the sideboard. It was my home, but it felt like I had invaded someone else's place. The only thing I thought was, "Where's Ryan?" I took the cell phone and called him right there. He answered on the 3rd attempt. I said softly, firmly, "Ryan, are you here?" And he replied in a bored voice, "Mom, I'm solving some things in the center. What calm? Megan welcomed you. Why? Right? Don't worry. It's okay. Wow. It's okay. No." Those 3 words cut me through more than any scream. Don't worry. They were not. As if I was exaggerating. As if I were the visitor. Me. I went to the hallway and opened the door to my room. There were Megan's sister's bags, with clothes scattered on my bed, and a little girl sleeping on my pillow. I went to the kitchen. The stove was filthy, and my good crockery, the English crockery I bought 12 times, with leftover sauce and glasses of lipstick. That's when Megan, still with my apron on her body, looked at me over my shoulder and said, "Martha, if you want something, there's hot soda on the table." Her naturalness, as if I were an inconvenient visitor. It took my breath away. I took a diff. Oh. I sat in the nearest chair. Lord. I looked around. I did still don't sound. It was my house, but there was nothing left of me there. Neither smell, sound, nor order, nor respect. It was as if I had been erased, and they didn't even disguise it. Megan's mother spoke again. Ma, out of nowhere. We almost had to rent a hotel. Can you believe it? Lucky that Ryan decided to open this old house. Right? I'm glad it's still good for something. How? I was silent. My blood boiled, but my voice didn't come out. You know that kind of pain that you don't even know where it hurts. Do you just know that everything hurts? That was it. I got up, went to the front window and saw my coconut tree, the one I planted on the first day, all scratched with a colored marker. And a thought came to me like a whisper. If they did this to me in the light of day, what else would they be able to do when I wasn't looking? I didn't know it yet, but that was just the beginning, because the real invasion, it was still hidden inside a closet. I stayed there, alone, in the kitchen, observing that scenario that seemed to be from another life. It was as if I had been erased, pushed out of what I had built myself. The voices were overlapping. Laughter, nay, loud conversations, and me trying to find some trace of my home. But all I saw were faces that didn't know my story, nor did they want to know. Megan entered the room as if commanding a ship. With a glass in his hand, he looked straight at me and, in an impatient tone, "How?" said, "How? Are you still here?" I took a deep breath. I pretended not to hear. I went to the front door, looked again at my destroyed garden, and when I turned to leave, she spoke, and he spoke loudly, as if he wanted everyone to listen. "Why is this old leech here? We don't have room." The words hit dry. I stopped. The world was mute for a second. I just listened to my heart, slow, tired, trying to understand what. The eyes turned to me. Oh, some feigned surprise. Others just turned their faces away. But no one said anything. No one defended it. Not even my son. I swallowed. I felt my throat close. Smile. That smile of someone who has learned to swallow a frog all his life. I replied, with a calmness that only those who have been through the war know. "All right, dear, I just came to get some things." I grabbed my purse, which was lying in the corner of the room, and walked to the door. Each step seemed to weigh a ton. The sun was already lower in the sky. The sea breeze, which always calmed me, now seemed to mock me. I opened the car door. I sat down. No, closed tightly, and there, alone. I closed my eyes. I didn't cry, but I saw it all like a movie. Every dress I sewed at night, every penny kept in the envelope, hidden in the closet, every trip I took with Ryan as a boy, dreaming of that house. I remembered the first time I saw that empty lot and thought, here I will grow old with dignity. And now, Leo, I was called a leech in my home, with my name still on the house contract, by a woman who never knew what it was to be absent. Something in me broke, but it didn't. If it broke and reorganized inside that car, with the smell of sea air and humiliation stuck to my skin, I felt something new. It was not sadness. It was something else, a firmer silence, which said, "Aldo now, I'll start to enough is enough." I didn't know yet what I was going to do, but I knew that day was a milestone. Nile, Antisisho. Hunter knew that day was a milestone. That the woman who entered that house with her head down, it wasn't the same one that was now in the driver's seat. And there, harmed, with my hands on the wheel and my soul in pieces, I promised myself, I will not scream. I will not beg. I will not take revenge. But also, I will not allow it anymore. Not. And maybe what I discovered in the following days is even worse than that sentence, because there are betrayals that come loudly, and others that are hidden in papers. That night, I stayed at the Golden Bay Motel, the one that is close to the curve, where the asphalt almost meets the sea. He was the only one with a vacancy, without reservation. The room had a strong smell of mold and old cigarettes. The plastic curtain in the bathroom was torn, and the bed, it seemed to be made of stones. I lay there, with my body aching, but what weighed most was my heart. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice cutting through the air again. Old leech, Mom. And the worst was not what she said. It was my son's silence. I stared at the ceiling, remembering when he was little. Ryan was born on a rainy night in a Houston public hospital. I was 24 years old. James still did truck freight, and we barely had a way to buy diapers. But I did everything alone. So, most of the time, I outed. When he had that fever at the age of 3, I spent the whole night with him on my lap, making a compress with a wet cloth and praying that the thermometer would go down. When he broke his arm on the playground, I ran with him on my lap to the emergency room, in slippers and an apron stained with paint. I sewed his school uniform with scraps. I turned around so that he would never notice the lack. The first bicycle I bought in a church bazaar, the Sobogan. The first computer I put together, sewing change for 2 years. And the car he used in college, that Corolla 96, I was the one who paid. I took out a high-interest loan, cut cable TV, stopped buying meat for months, everything for him to study calmly. I remember as if it were today, the day he graduated. It was just the two of us. He hugged me tightly, still with his gown, and said in my ear, "Wow, Mom, everything I am, I owe you." I cried there, hidden, once, behind the stands, and I believed it. I believed he knew. that he would never forget. And now, lying in that cheap motel bed, wow, with the sheets rough and the soul torn, I could only wonder, what happened to that boy? Where did that son who claimed to protect me from everything go? Is a woman capable of turning a man against her own mother? Or has it just grown? And was it never what I thought it was? I'm here, opening my heart, telling my story. If you're listening, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel, because I still have a lot of things saved to tell you. Because when a mother starts to be erased inside her own home, it's not just my story, it's a lot of people's. That morning, lying on my side, I hugged my bag. It was the only thing that still belonged to me there. And even though I couldn't sleep, I stayed there, firm, now because something told me that the worst was yet to come. And when I found out what they had done with my things, that's when I understood that it wasn't just contempt. It was flat, and it was theft. You won't believe what I found in my closet, hidden. I came back the next day. He had slept badly, his body bruised, and his head heavy. But I still had a little bit of hope inside me. Well, I thought that, no, perhaps Megan had regretted it, that Ryan had come home and put some sense in those people's heads. It was not possible that they had said all that in good conscience. I got in the car and drove slowly to the house. The gate was wide open, as if it no longer had an owner. The grass in the garden was already starting to turn yellow from trampling so much. I parked on the street, took a deep breath, and walked to the entrance. Who attended me was Megan's sister, that one Veronica. Neither good morning, nor question, nor respect. He just looked me up and down, with a bored look on his face, and said, your things are in the garage. No, ma'am. Megan said it would be better this way. That chilled me. Now, I didn't even have a name anymore. Lady. Neither Mrs. Barbara nor Ryan's mother. Just a formal nuisance that should take your stuff and leave. I went to the garage, and there I saw a portrait of my soul. Plastic bags thrown on the floor. My clothes, the ones I'd spent years sewing. My mass dresses, my mother's shawl, all pounded. Near didn't care, anti-silver. Crumpled. I know. The case musty and contemptuous. One of my blouses was stained with tomato sauce. My linen handkerchiefs were tangled with used dish towels. Even my rosary, the one who stayed with me at Jameis' wake, was thrown into a grocery bag with a broken hairbrush. I opened a box and saw that part of my dishes were cracked. Plates that I myself brought from Mexico in 1987. Now, broken in half, wrapped in old newspaper as if they were garbage. I felt the world spin. I leaned against the garage wall so I wouldn't fall. I entered the house, even without being invited. Calm. Wanted she boy. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The kitchen was dirty, the stove filthy, the sink full of grease. I opened the crockery cabinet and saw that the crystal glasses were gone. The good ones. The ones I only wore at Christmas. I went to my room. Wow. I opened the door slowly. Inside, down in the tub, two children slept in my bed, covered with my flowery duvet. One of them chewed gum, and a nice apple cob, a easy cured hum, lying on his back, the television on, the dressing table overturned. Oh, yeah. My jewel box empty. Alas, wow. They disappeared with everything. The bracelets I got on my 60th birthday. The earrings James gave me on our 20th Christmas together. Even my mother's ring, which I had kept all my life, now was gone. I felt the ground come out from under my feet, and when I thought it couldn't get any worse, I saw Megan's mother come out of the bathroom, wearing my bathrobe, the white one, in dinner, not ice towel, with a terry towel, one with my initials embroidered on the chest. She passed me as if she were the owner of the house. Good morning. Oh, he said, as if he owed no satisfaction. I didn't answer. None. I stood there, standing still, small. Yeah, no sound. For the first time in my life, I felt old. Really old. Not because of the white hair or the wrinkles, but because they treated me as someone who no longer has a voice, no place, no value, because everything I was thrown in a plastic bag, and what remained, no one even wanted to look. I went back to the garage. I took my rosary. I held on tight. I sat in an empty crate, and there, I said a prayer, not to ask for strength, but to ask for clarity, because something in that house told me that this was not just neglect. It was flat. It was intention. And if they were taking my things like that, what else were they trying to get out of me? I would only find out about it when I got my hands on a piece of paper that they almost threw away. And there, listeam, and there, everything started to make sense, or worse, falling apart. The house was full, but no one noticed my presence. I was a figure for them, a shadow that appeared only to get in the way, and that's exactly what allowed me to walk freely through the rooms, without arousing suspicion, as they screamed about a soccer game in the living room. I walked to my room with silent footsteps. My heart was beating faster than I wanted. I felt in the air that something was wrong. It wasn't just mess or lack of respect. It was deeper. Dirtier. It was as if they had laid their hands on something sacred. In the back of my bedroom closet, in the bedroom between a shelf of shoes and the wall, there was a secret of mine. A fake partition that James helped build when we were renovating the house. Inside, I kept what was most valuable, not for the price, but for the memory. Important documents, old letters, a photo album of my mother, family jewelry, and the papers of the house. Nobody knew about that. Neither did Ryan. I stared. At least, that's what I thought. I knelt down slowly. How? My knees are no longer the same as before. But the pain in my body was small compared to what was to come. I pushed the partition carefully. Now, when she gave in, I immediately felt that something was wrong. Everything was out of place. The envelope where I kept the scriptures was open, with loose and crumpled papers, my mother's letters, folded anyway, the album gone, and the jewel box empty. Oh, my heist. I stood there for a few seconds, just listening to the sound of my own breathing. Something inside me still wanted to believe that maybe they had tripped, moved by mistake. But then I saw it, a bundle of new, fresh papers with a recent date. I took the first one. It was a request to transfer the house, my house, to Ryan's name. The second document was even worse. A medical report. How? It said that I had early signs of senile dementia. Signed by a doctor I've never seen in my life. It even had a stamp. Well, in the corner of the sheet, no, a handwritten note. With the value of the house, we were able to pay for the children's school, and there is still enough to pay for the car. That was like a slow stab, right between the ribs. I trembled. The view blurred. I sat on the floor, with the papers in my hands, trying to put together the pieces of what I was reading. So that was it. It wasn't just negligence. It was flat, cold, cruel, deliberate. They were waiting for me to weaken, to lose my lucidity. And if I didn't lose on my own, they would find a way to prove on paper that I didn't hit my head. Well, that phrase from Megan echoed again in my memory. Old leech. Now it made sense. She wanted to take what was mine. I wanted to reduce myself to nothing. And the worst, Ryan knew. It was all there. His signature on the transfer request. His name along with Megan's. He didn't just know, he agreed. I wanted to scream, break everything, but I just closed my eyes and stood there, leaning against the cold wall of the closet, with the papers on my lap. And I asked myself, how do you survive such a betrayal? Not from a stranger, but from his own son. Of the boy you raised with so much effort, that he carried in his lap, that you protected from everything. It was at that moment that I felt that something inside me changed place. It wasn't just sadness. It was a cutting lucidity, as if pain wanted to calm. Suddenly, calm. I had woken up from a long dream and realized that I was alone, but live and entirely deep and with the truth in his hands. If you've made it this far, listen to what I'm going to tell you. No matter how great the pain seems, no matter how much the world pushes you into the corner, there is still a moment where we turn the key, where the woman who suffered stands up in silence, and that's where the story starts to turn. Stay with me until the end, because the most memorable moment of this story is yet to happen. You will understand what justice is when it comes slowly, Oh. I left the room as I entered. No one noticed. I kept the papers with me without saying anything. But now I knew. And when a woman knows, she doesn't need to scream. Just wait for the right time. And that's when I decided I was going to seek help. But it wasn't emotional help, you. It was another. Now, the one that no one expects from an old lady with white hair, and who indicated the right name to me. It was a neighbor who had also been left behind. Do you know what he told me? You need to meet Thomas. And that's when everything started to change. I returned to the Golden Bay Motel, still with the papers pressed to my chest. I sat in the car, without starting the engine, and stood there looking at nothing. The sky was beginning to darken. A fine mist covered the street lights, and I felt a mixture of hatred, shame, and a dangerous calm. While tucking a pair, one of those who don't scream, they just watch. Because when the world turns its back on a woman who has already lost everything and still is standing, that's when she becomes someone no one should underestimate. I entered the motel room, pulled the thick curtain from the window and took an old notebook from my bag, one of those hardcover ones that I got on any birthday. I opened it to the first page and wrote in large letters, "What they want steal from me." Below, I started to list: home, dignity, lucidity, truth, Then I opened the camera of the cell phone, still the old one, with a cracked screen, and took pictures of the forged papers, the transfer request, the medical report, and then, I went to the social networks of that Veronica. All I had to do was look for her name, and there it was. A recent post with the kids in the pool of my house. The caption written with gusto: "Oh, Tapida, vacation in our new beach house. Gratitude is everything." I felt my stomach churn. My home treated as someone else's conquest. My memories turned into a social network showcase. But that gave me strength. I knew what I needed to do. The next morning, I went straight to the bank, the one on the corner of 25th Street and Avenue P, the same one where I opened my account in the 80s, when I was still paid in cash for each seam. I walked in and saw the usual manager, Mr. Howard, now, who already had white hair by the time Ryan was still wearing braces. He recognized me from afar. "It's a long time, and such to a Barbara, how long ago? What can I help with?" I sat in the chair facing him. I took the glasses out of my bag and said directly, "I need you to block any movement that doesn't come from my hands. And I want to know, do I still have that reserve?" He typed, looked at the screen, confirmed. Ray is so calmed. You have 123,000 and some change." I nodded. With a dry smile. "So, okay. I also need a mental capacity report and the indication of a good lawyer. And may this stay between us." He looked at me with a respect that I hadn't seen in a long time. "There will be, Mrs. Burra, whatever you need." I left there with a new briefcase, A strange feeling of power and a certainty. The only way to defeat people like that. It is for the silence of the law, because yelling is no use with those who are deaf of convenience. But signed paper, justice done. This they hear well. No, there are times in life when we are pushed to the bottom of the well by those we raised with love. And there, in the dark, we understand that no one is going to pull us back. But she also realizes that she can, even hurt, even angry, start climbing back, one step at a time. And each step is made of dignity. If you've ever felt this, if you've ever had to gather strength where you didn't have it, comment here with I know how it is, or I understand you. These words seem small, but when we read, they warm the chest in a way that only those who have suffered understand. That night, I wrote my plan by hand, a list of everything he could still control, and at the top of it, just one sentence. They think they've won. How? What they didn't know is that the next day, I would visit without warning, and he would leave something on the living room table. How? An envelope that would make Megan pale and Ryan understand that a betrayed mother does not forget, and that, sometimes justice comes in silence, but with the weight of a storm. I took the bus to Houston early in the morning, with the briefcase glued to my chest, as if it were a shield. I put on my best coat, the navy blue one James liked, arranged my hair in a tight bun, and went with my head held high. I knew that this meeting was not just with a lawyer, it was with my own destiny. His name was Thomas Gallagher, and they say that when pain finds the right professional, it turns into action. His office was in an old red brick building near Travis Street. I went up in the elevator alone, listening to the noise of the gears, as if it were the sound of my past rising with me. The door opened, and the secretary, a sweet-spoken girl named Amy, guided me into a bright room, without luxury, but with dignity. A few minutes later, Thomas came in, tall, nurse, de un abuelfab, el conseguid chabor, afsis, dark, with gray hair at his temples. He had a look that he heard before he spoke. He held out his hand to me. I squeezed firmly. Well, Barbara Weston, Annotated. I brought everything, and I handed over the folder. Inside were the photos of the house, the messages posted by Veronica, the forged documents, the fake medical report, the bank records, my handwritten account on 4 sheets of notebook, small print, without erasure. He didn't interrupt me. Well, he just listened. He read, analyzed, took notes. After almost an hour, he closed his briefcase, crossed his hands on the table, and said calmly, "Wait, Mrs. Barbara, your story's going to become jurisprudence." That sentence gave me goosebumps all over, not out of vanity. I never wanted to be an example of anything, but because someone finally told me, what they're doing to you isn't normal. It's not small. It's not an old woman's exaggeration. It is a crime. It is immorality, and it leads to jail. He was didactic. He explained it to me step by step. First, he would file an emergency request for asset blocking, preventing any movement or transfer of the house. Afterwards, they would request an eviction order for illegal occupation, with documentary evidence. In parallel, anyhow, he would prepare a formal complaint for falsification of public documents and attempted property scam against an elderly person, a serious crime in Texas, which could lead to criminal prosecution. And, finally, a request for compensation for moral damages and material losses, all within the law. Way and Carbonar, all in the time of justice. I listened attentively, writing down every word, as if I were learning to speak again. At one point, he looked me in the eye and said, "You don't want revenge. You want justice. And justice, Mrs. Barbara, is like a well-made seam, invisible from the outside, but safe from the inside." Well, I almost cried. I left that office with my shoulders straighter. For the first time in many days, I took a deep breath. The air seemed different. No, what happened? The body hurt less, not because the pain had passed, but because now she had direction. She had a name. It had a destination. And I knew I wasn't alone. When I returned to Galveston that evening, the sea seemed bluer. I parked the car in front of the beach, looked at the horizon, and remembered a phrase my mother said: "When they take everything from you, see what is left." And with that, rebuild. When the land is seared high, what remained in me was stronger than any wall. And there, with my feet in the sand and the wind cutting my face, I decided, I was going to leave a warning. Something small, silent, no, but that it would remain in the memory of those who tried to erase me. Because justice does not scream. She arrives with a signed paper, no hound, and it imposes itself. But what I didn't know is that same night, Megan and Ryan would do something even lower. A final gesture. No. One more step. No. And when I found out what they were up to with the bank, I understood that the fight was just beginning. The following weekend arrived with heavy skies, one of those cloudy ones that seem to announce bad things. I already knew he would come. Megan had posted on social media that they were going to enjoy the last few days before the summer ends. The caption came with a champagne emoji. Well, I also saw the video of the children laughing in my pool, and deep down, there he was, my son, smiling as if nothing was happening, as if the floor of the house where he grew up hadn't been torn from his own mother. I waited, sitting on the sidewalk, facing my garage. She was wearing a light blouse and her hair up. From a distance, she looked like just another lady sunbathing. But inside, not. I was armed with the truth. It arrived in the new SUV. Painting shining. Smoked glass. Private school sticker pasted in the corner. Now, he parked without looking at me. He got out of the car and gave Megan a quick kiss, who appeared at the door in a short dress and her cell phone in her hand. They laughed at something. She went in. He stayed. I got up slowly. Wow. Approached with firm steps. Ryan, can we talk alone? He looked to the side. What? As if looking for an excuse. But he didn't find it. No, said Lyle. He nodded. No. We went to the end of the sidewalk, near the coconut tree that he planted himself at the age of 12. What, how? We stood there. Oh, he didn't look me in the eye. I started simple. Oh. Did you know about the fake medical report? He took a deep breath. Silence. Did you know about the transfer papers? He bit his lips. I kept looking at the ground. You signed. Ryan, you let them say that your mother is losing her mind just to keep the house. Was that it? The answer did not come in the form of words. It came in the form of omission. He fiddled with his watch, scratched his neck, then whispered, I didn't want that. Mom, it was Megan. Ow. She said it was just to ensure safety, that you would end up getting tangled up with the bills, that it was better to prevent it. Prevent? I interrupted. Prevent against myself? He tried to hold on. I didn't want to hurt you. But she stayed on top. Nice. Pressured me. Mama did sit oil. He said it was for us, for the children. Now, it Kitchener. On the six stopow, Tante. I closed my eyes for a moment. And when I opened it, now, I felt a strange force inside me. A clarity, as if finally, I was seeing my son with the right eyes. He was not a monster, not a thief. It was worse. He was a coward. No, you betrayed me. Ryan, my voice came out low but firm, not out of greed, but out of cowardice. You sold me cheap because you were afraid of contradicting someone, and that's what hurts me the most. He finally looked at me, and in his eyes I saw regret, but no gesture of repair, nothing that would undo what had already been done. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, no. Will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. Why? Watch the grow. It makes more difference than you think. Because sometimes all a woman has is her own voice. And if it is erased, there's nothing left. Ryan tried to explain himself more. He spoke of solving everything, of sitting calmly. But I had already understood. That conversation was not a new beginning. It was a moral farewell. He was no longer the boy I raised. He was a man who chose the easy way out, even if it meant stepping over his own mother. I turned my back before he said anything that might further tarnish what was left. I went back to the motel without looking back. And in the evening, I got a call. It was the lawyer, Thomas. And what he told me in that phone call made the blood run cold, because Megan had made a serious mistake, a mistake that would make justice inevitable. On Monday, well, before the sun rose for good. I was ready. I put on discreet clothes, hair tied up with bobby pins. Wow. Flat shoes. Thomas stopped by the motel to pick me up at 7 a.m. In the back seat, what two men, one a bailiff and a county policeman. None of them said much, but it was enough to look into the eyes to know that they knew what they were going to do. Justice, cold, clean, silent, as it should be. And we arrived at Seawall Boulevard at 7:58 a.m. The sea was calm. Nercity was calm, as if holding my breath with me. I stopped on the sidewalk and stood there. Thomas walked to the door with the documents in his hands, the officer and the policeman close behind. At 8 a.m. sharp, now, he crashed. Megan answered the door in her pajamas, Nessie hair, a mug in hand, still sleepy. When she saw the papers in Thomas' hands, her face turned pale like chalk. He tried to close the door, but the officer put his foot in. Court order, me. Illegal occupation. 2 minutes to gather the adults in the house. Her mother then appeared in that same bathrobe of mine, now dirty, dragging her words and shouting abuse of authority. Veronica came running, turning on her cell phone to film. The policeman asked for the device. She refused. He took it from her hand. Lo, the children began to cry. A boy ran into his room, screaming for his mother. Now, Megan was trembling. And Ryan? It wasn't. He didn't show up. Oh, Thomas, with the calmness of someone who has seen too much, declared in a firm voice, "Well, you have 2 hours to leave, and nothing, and absolutely nothing that is not proven to be yours can be taken. The house has become a whirlwind." Screams, suitcases being dragged, doors slamming, bags tearing. Veronica was trying to gather clothes in a canvas bag. Her mother was yelling at the policeman. Megan was crying, holding a washcloth, and I stayed on the sidewalk, silent, standing out. I am like an old tree that has seen too much storm to be shaken by wind. This time, I didn't cry. I just watched. Every inch of that mess was a piece of my heart being reordered. It was as if everything they had stolen from me was returning to the right place. Thomas approached me, handed me a key. "It's yours again, Mrs. Barbara. Legally, morally, and with witnesses." I held that key as if it were a new seed in my hands. I looked at the open door. The boxes scattered around. The sound of the wheels of the suitcases scraping on the wooden floor. The chaos of those who try to leave in a hurry, but without understanding that what they really lost does not fit in luggage. No. What fighty, Ajuna. At that moment, standing there, mountain succumb, feeling the sea wind hit my face, I understood. That justice is not revenge. Justice is a return, a calm, a firm and deserved return. And as much as the heart still aches, when the truth imposes itself, it sews back what they tried to tear up. Nozon and Chantal, stay with me, because the hardest thing is not over yet. The house returned, but some wounds, they were just starting to hurt. And what I found at the bottom of the office drawer, when I finally went back in, made me understand that Megan hadn't given up yet. She left one last trap, and I almost fell. After exactly 2 hours, the officer returned to me with a respectful gesture, well, holding the key between his fingers as if giving back more than metal. It was memory, dignity, discernment, all that started well, and a piece of history. I took it slowly. No, I felt the weight. It was light in the body, but it carried the weight of everything I had lived. Swallowed and silenced, the last to leave was Negan. He came with a wet face, but it was not regret. It was anger, frustration. He saw that he lost and could no longer control the narrative. She stood in front of me, eyes narrowed, no, and said through her teeth, "You're going to pay for this, bitter old woman." Oh. I took a deep breath and replied, without raising my tone, "Wow, I've already paid. Now, who pays? It's you." She turned her back, dragging the suitcase. The noise of the training wheels on the asphalt sounded like music to me. And when the truck pulled off the sidewalk for the first time in weeks, I was alone. But it was not empty. I opened the gate carefully, as if rediscovering a part of himself. The front door handle still had the ribbon tied that Ryan put on as a child on Christmas 1996. Entered, now, ninth seal, and what I found, it was pain and relief mixed. Each room had a damage. The sofa that I resurfaced myself was stained with grease. The kitchen walls scribbled with pen. My porcelain plates exchanged for plastic cups. But none of that mattered, because there, among the dirt, the echo and the smell of old frying, there was a truth that cleaned everything. That house was mine. It was desecrated, yes, but also was empty, and for that very reason, ready to be restarted. I passed by every corner. The room still had remnants of their presence, a sock in the corner, a broken toy under the bed, the bathroom mirror with stained lipstick, white arm. But my hands were steady. I took a cloth, a bucket of water, and started cleaning, alone, in silence, not because someone asked me to, but because each wipe of the cloth was like erasing a lie. Everything in place gave me back. When I finished ironing the living room, I looked at my armchair. That one, no one had the courage to sit down. It was as if they knew that there was still a kind of respect there. I approached slowly. I sat down, breathed, and I closed my eyes. The body hurt, but the soul, he was at peace. It wasn't a victory with fireworks. There was no hug or music or applause. There was only silence, a warm silence steadfast, full of presence. And there is a kind of silence that no one can steal from us. It is the silence of dignity that has survived shame, of the woman who didn't scream, but won. I sat there for long minutes, listening only to the sound of the sea in the distance and my own thoughts, and I found myself remembering such old things. The smell of the first coffee made in that kitchen, the day I painted that wall with Ryan, and he asked me if he could draw a sun with his fingers. The morning I got the call saying James wouldn't be coming back from the hospital. It's these memories, those that are kept in small corners of the house, who resist even when all seems lost. And look, I know that you also have a place, a smell or a sound that has never left your heart. Tell me here in the comments, have you ever experienced something like this? Or do you know someone who has been through this? Sometimes sharing a memory is like giving it back to the world. And deep down, that's what keeps us alive inside. At the end of that afternoon, I went to the office. There were still things to collect, documents out of place, notebooks of mine turned over, beyond and it was there, now. When I opened the third drawer, the deepest one, which I almost never used, that I found, an envelope, white, unnamed, no sender, and Lucidity Mercado. Inside, I forgot, apologize. There was a letter, handwritten, but not with my handwriting. I recognized the second I read the first line. It was Megan. And what she wrote there. It was not an apology. It was a message, a threat. And behind those words, there was something even worse, something that could harm me. And if I wasn't fast, she might succeed. Megan's letter was short, but every word was a poisoned thorn. She said that if I kept making up stories, things in my life could come to light. It did not specify which ones. He only hinted. He said that in times when everything had become a scandal, it was enough for a well-told lie to destroy a reputation, and it even ended with a you chose war. So, don't complain about the answer. I folded the letter calmly, without letting anger take over. Because I knew when someone leaves written threats, he is not smart. He is desperate. The next morning, I got in the car and went straight to Thomas' office. I handed over the envelope and told them everything. He read it, shook his head, and said, "This is not just contempt. This is an attempt at coercion." From that moment on, the second phase began. It was no longer about reclaiming the house. Now it was about holding accountable. Formally, then no interview eyes. Legally, publicly, Thomas moved fast. He took the letter as complementary evidence to the process. It gathered all of Veronica's posts, where she said we finally have our beach house. He filed each one as proof of undue occupation. He gathered the prints, the photos of the state of the house, the documents from the violated closet, and it opened a specific inquiry into the falsified medical report. We went to the Internal Affairs Department of the hospital where the doctor attended. Thomas filed the complaint based on graphotechnical expertise. My handwriting did not appear in any request, but the report was signed as if I had requested an evaluation of dementia myself. A coup. A fraud. The hospital, out of ethical duty, opened an internal investigation. Oh, one. And it only took a few days for them to discover that doctor had already made other reports under private consultation. Silent exchanges, subscription money. His name was suspended. And the case passed on to the Texas Attorney General's office. Now it was official. The state was involved. No capture. And when the state gets involved, those who thought they were playing at taking what belongs to others begin to understand that real life charges with interest and correction. My mother's jewelry, the ones I kept for more than 50 years, was included as aggravated theft. An expert came to the house, recorded the violated closet, catalogued the pieces that were in the inventory of James's estate. Proven, sound. They were no longer there. The delegate of the case requested the temporary blocking of the couple's assets, and Megan and Ryan began to be formally investigated for asset fraud, misrepresentation, attempted appropriation of elderly woman's assets, and theft of family property. Now it was no longer a family issue. It was a matter of law. I remember sitting back in my armchair at night after leaving the courthouse. The house still smelled of dust, but I lit the lavender candle I got from a neighbor on my last birthday. I watched the fire flutter and thought, Lynn. It all started with a shouted phrase, "Why is this old leech here?" And now, this old woman was a central witness in a process that could put a couple behind bars. And I didn't take pleasure in it. Not at all. But there was peace. A peace that comes when the truth finds a way. A long road full of curves, but that leads somewhere safe. Do you know that moment when we realize that we are no longer a victim to become the protagonist of our own life again? It's rare. Not shareable. But when it happens, changes everything. If you've experienced this, even if in another context, you'll understand what I'm saying. What was it that made you come out of the deep end? Was there a gesture, a decision, or an exact moment when you turned the key? If you want, tell me here in the comments. I read each one. Because stories like this, they have more strength than we imagine. But not everything was resolved. Thomas called me days later in a more tense voice. He said that the prosecutor accepted the complaint, but it also revealed something he hadn't told before. Megan and Ryan had made a suspicious financial transaction shortly before the eviction order. And now, there were indications that they were no longer living in Galveston. They were hiding assets, or worse, running away. The hell suit, I'd sit here. And if that were true, the case would take on even greater proportions, because late justice, it is also injustice. and I wasn't going to accept that. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. White envelope. Wow. Without sender. Wow. The handwriting is you so calm. However, jumped out at me. I would recognize that crooked R of Ryan even blindfolded. I opened it with trembling hands, but not from emotion. It was more of a kind of tiredness. You know? You know? That tiredness that only a mother who has swallowed too much pride understands. The first line said, "Moo, Mom." I don't even know where to start. Nasha, I read slowly, not because he wanted to savor every word, but because each one was a razor wrapped in satin. Ryan said he was devastated by everything that happened, that he never wanted to see you suffer, that he just wanted to protect my family. He used words like pressure, confusion, Megan's lack of control, as if it were possible to wash his hands with half a dozen tearful expressions. In no passage, none, Mew, was there a forgive me, and only justifications, just lukewarm sentences written by someone who still doesn't understand the damage he caused. In the middle of the letter, I can't uncall what a middle of the letter. He said that Megan was being attacked on the networks, that the children asked when Grandma comes back, and that it was all going too far. Too far? I reread this 3 times. Too far for whom? For those who tried to hospitalize me as incapable, who invaded my house with a pen and a plan. He also said that he missed it. No, that he remembered his childhood. That it could still be different. But there was no truth there. There was fear. Fear of what was to come. Fear of their name in county records. Fear of being unmasked outside the comfortable circle of manipulation. I folded the letter carefully. I didn't tear it up, as a part of me wanted to do. I put it in a deep drawer, next to the police report, and I thought, may he remember the mother he had, and the woman who lost. Because what Ryan hadn't yet understood, and may never understand, is that when a mother gets up after being humiliated, she will never be the same again. That woman who one day lowered her head on the balcony while he pretended not to see. Deep there, no one, and sing out, I did see how for side. And in her place, another was born. One that doesn't wait any longer, who does not accept crumbs of affection, who does not beg for presents, because dignity, this one, I relearned to carry alone. I went back to my routine. The house was already cleaner, more mine. I bought new cutlery. I replanted the flower beds destroyed by the children. I painted the bedroom wall light blue, the same color James said matched my eyes. I did everything myself, not out of pride, but because sometimes it is necessary to start with our own hands to remember who we are. And it was on one of those mornings, while I was wiping the kitchen with the cloth, that the phone rang. It was Thomas. His voice was firm, direct. Donna Barbara, Auntie, we got access to bank transactions, and there's something here that you need to see in person. My heart froze. because I knew if Megan and Ryan were hiding, it was because they still had cards up their sleeves, and one of them was about to be overturned. I went to Thomas' office later that afternoon. Gray sky, none. The kind of light that seems to announce that something important is going to happen. He received me with a closed face. He pulled up his chair, opened a brown briefcase, and showed me a sequence of bank documents. Suspicious transfers, large amounts of money, leaving Ryan's account to a joint account with Megan, which was registered in the name of a shell company. One more to you. There were thousands of dollars, moved weeks before the attempt to declare me incapable, and more. How? A payment made directly to the doctor of the false report, registered as family consultancy. Thomas looked up slowly and said, "They tried to hasten your death, Doña Barbara. I what? Not in the body, but on paper. No, Hadikan, Elpernaus. That cut me deep. A son who didn't have the courage to bury his mother, but that he tried to bury it in the system files. No coffin, no flowers, only signature and silence. I returned home with my stomach turned. I turned on the light in the room. Near I, and he soon successes, howled, sat down, and closed my eyes. For a few minutes, the feeling was not anger, no. It was one of mourning, and how it hurts to bury someone who is still alive, because at that moment, Ryan was no longer the boy in the blue stroller, nor the young man who hugged me when he passed college. He was just a lost man, hidden behind the choices of a woman he said he loved, but who treated his mother-in-law as an obstacle. And obstacle, folks, we jump, or removes. The next day, almost at dusk, I heard the sound of the gate being pushed. I looked through the curtain, and, for a second, no, I thought it was a mistake, but no, it was her, non. Megan, Nice, alone, I'm wearing a gray coat, his face swollen with crying or tiredness. Hard to say. He carried a large black bag, the kind we use when we need to take something we don't want to show. I opened the door slowly. She stopped on the steps. He didn't smile. He did not ask for permission. I just said, "I need to talk to you." I was silent, and she, numb, walked a for our choice, without asking permission, entered. Ryan. He walked to the living room table and placed the bag there. Carefully, none. "So, here, your jewels." He opened the zipper. So, inside, oh, wrapped in dish towels, were my mother's wedding rings, the necklace I got on my first Christmas with James, the small earrings I wore to Ryan's christening. Everything there, mixed, as if the entire past had been thrown into a bag of remorse. "I got it," she said. "Nash, nine, Kentucky, he said. But it wasn't to steal. It was to sell. We are deep in debt. Ryan lost a big contract, and no. I thought it could be solved without you noticing." I leaned against the corner of the table. Lied. His heart beat calmly. "Because there, I know so calmly. Naste Waishoto. She was not confessing out of repentance. I was trying to avoid the sinking. Megan continued. He said that Ryan was in depression. Wow. That his name had been removed from an investment group. That friends from the church had drifted away. That he was taking medication. Wow. You won, she said. Won. Through tears. But at what cost? And that's when I got up. I went to her. Then the water, not with fury, with presence. I looked into her eyes, and he said, Mas Khan, the one who destroyed your own family was you. Megan, I just defended myself. She was silent, then calm. Peace, and so did I, because sometimes silence weighs more than any sermon. She stood there, long, not knowing whether to cry or scream. He took the empty bag and walked to the door. Before leaving, now, I took to say. He looked back, but he said nothing, and neither did I, because there are things that we live and keep. But maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Enjoy this video and subscribe, and let's make this story reach those who need it. I closed the door. I locked it with the key. I approached the table. Looked at each piece, one by one. I touched it with my fingers as if I were touching old versions of myself. And in that silence, I understood. What she gave back, it wasn't just gold. It was memory. It was proof. It was the end of a cycle. But when I put everything back in the safe, I noticed something. A ring was missing. The simplest. What James gave me on our first anniversary. And that made me understand that she had not yet given up. That there was more. Much more. And I needed to find out before it was too late. The following Sunday, I went to 9 o'clock Mass. It was the first time I had stepped foot in the church since it all happened. I put on my best lilac dress, the one in light linen, and tied my hair up, as James liked, in a simple bun. Simple bun, with a discreet brooch on the side. When I entered, I felt the eyes following me, some with respect, others with surprise, but none with pity. And that you saw, my God, that was a relief. I sat on the same bench as always, next to Mrs. Estelle, who gave me a slight squeeze on the hand, without saying a word. Sometimes the silence between two lived women says more than 1,000 speeches. The priest began the homily with a passage on justice without hatred, and as much as he did not name names, the message hung in the air like a strong perfume. I knew that the city already knew. On the way out, I went to the corner cafe. I ordered my mint tea and sat at the small table by the window. 2 girls whispered when they saw me. One of them, who had already had 3 dresses sewn with me a few years ago, stopped at my desk and said, "No." I read the article, and look, You are an inspiration. I gave a calm smile, because I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who's tired of being swallowed. But it is curious how, when a woman stands up in silence, the noise it makes inside the others is deafening. The newspaper came out on Tuesday. Discreet but firm headline. Whams! Galveston elderly woman sues son and daughter-in-law for attempted theft and medical forgery. The matter was clear. Without exaggeration, it said that the case was under investigation, that documents were falsified, now that the doctor's name was being analyzed by state agencies, and it had a phrase of mine, which Thomas asked permission to divulge. I only did what any mother who still loves herself would have done. This moved the city, and with them, especially with them, I knew, from the winds that run faster than cars in a small town, that Ryan had to take the kids out of private school, that Megan was removed from the store where she worked, that their house was put in lieu to pay part of the legal costs, and that friends from the old prayer circle stopped greeting them in the market. I didn't want any of that interest. I didn't want to. But there are things that life charges alone, and this is one of the phrases that marked me the most during all this. When the truth is silent, time screams. And if you've been following this story so far, let me tell you something. I know that it seems that the worst is over, that the world has already turned. But no, the most memorable moment was yet to come, and that's why I ask, from the bottom of my heart, it doesn't get out of there. Stay with me, because what came next? It was what really sealed everything. The week after the newspaper's publication, the local prosecutor's office called Thomas for a new hearing. Something had surfaced in Megan's financial records, a joint account in someone else's name, used to try to hide some of the jewelry sold. But what took me by surprise was the name. Veronica Antonistinko. The sister, the one that treated me like an old piece of furniture. They were together from the beginning. What's more, they used Ryan's CPF to open a fake company in my name. The intention? To declare that I was a partner in a bankrupt business, in order to justify a request for interdiction. Thomas looked at me with a serious face and said, Doña Barbara, this is no longer a family drama. This is a criminal scheme. And for the first time, he used the word prison. The process could now lead to preventive detention. No, sometimes we think we've seen it all, that he has felt everything. But when I realized how far they were willing to go, just to get out of me what I built with love, with brick, with tears, then I understood. It wasn't just about me. It was about every woman who was ever called useless, old, heavy. It was about dignity, and dignity is not negotiable. He defends himself. Until the end? But the end, the end had not yet come. Because days later, they knock on my door, an envelope in his hand, a subpoena, not for me, but to testify, against Ryan. And that's when that everything began to turn. Do you want to know what was in that hearing? So listen to me in the next part, because even I was speechless by what happened in that room. When Thomas called me, saying he had news, I confess that my heart raced. At this point in life, Pam, we learn to wait for everything, except for justice. I went to his office with firm steps, but with my stomach turned. He greeted me in that usual serious manner. But there was something in his eyes, something calm. They accepted the deal. Narma called. Ralma accepted the deal. He said, Ryan and Megan were no longer going to push the case, nor risk a public trial. They signed what the prosecution proposed. $25,000 in fines each, 200 hours of community service, and, most importantly, criminal record for fraud against the elderly. Their file, Newtown, once so clean and fragrant, now carried a stain. No, a brand that would not come out with excuses or reputation washing in a church group. I was silent, for a long time, until I asked, Whoa, what about my name? Thomas opened an envelope, took out a paper with a red stamp on the top. The medical report was annulled. The notary has already been notified. Mom, you are clean. This is Barbara, clean as it always has been. Tom. I breathed. It wasn't just paper. It was identity. It was honor returned. Because when someone tries to tell the world that you've lost your mind, and the world believes, you die a little inside. But in that instant, I was reborn. The next day, I went to the registry office. I wore my blue dress, the same one I wore when I first signed the deed to the house. I asked to make the property non-transferable until my death. No document, no pen, no signature can take it away from me now. And when I go, nice wonder, he won't go to the family. He goes to a foundation that takes care of elderly widows, women who have lost everything, husbands, livelihood, voice, but who still carry dignity. That house, brick by brick, sweat by sweat, will now serve as a refuge for others like me. And in the will, I made it clear, I am unseeable Jananok. Ryan will not receive a coin, not out of revenge, but for justice. As I walked home, I saw the sun beat down the freshly painted porch. I leaned against the railing and felt the sea wind hit my face. I realized something there, right in that salty breeze. There are defeats that liberate more than victories, and there are silences who shout louder than any speech. I didn't get it all back, but I gained something that many people never have. The peace of having done the right thing, even alone. But just when I thought everything had settled down, that the cycle was finally closed, I received an unexpected visitor. And what that person said, it stirred a piece of me that I thought had already hardened. Want to know what it was? So stay with me. Because what's next? It has nothing to do with the law. It has to do with forgiveness, or the absence of it. Well, it's been a few weeks since the house was mine again, but really, it was only now that I realized what it really means. Silence ceased to be the sound of pain and became the sound of my freedom. I wake up unhurriedly, prepare my coffee with calm hands, and sometimes I just listen to the noise of the kettle, as if each whistle is a reminder that I'm alive. I don't owe anyone an explanation. I don't need to squeeze into corners of my own house. The time is now mine, and mine alone. I hired a caregiver. Her name is Jenna. Lunatal. Lucastar. Come twice a week. He has steady hands, a sweet smile, and speaks calmly. It's not because I need help getting out of bed or to remember to take the medicines. It's because, after all, I've decided that I also deserve to be taken care of. I am no less strong for accepting company. Im visa nor hein though na. Jenna takes me to the market, helps me reorganize the closets, and when she has time, sits with me on the porch to talk about life. She listens to me unhurriedly, and I found out that this is golden. I went back to embroidery. I took out of the back of the closet the cloths I kept for decades. Blue, green, pink lines. Time has made them a little dull, but my eyes still see in them the promise of beauty. I started a new embroidery with the phrase that I want to leave framed on the living room wall. I raised my son, but who raised me? It was me. Oh, and the sea. Why, the sea is still there. Every evening I walk to the sand, take off my shoes and let the cold water touch my feet. I stand still, looking at the horizon, feeling that endless blue speaks to me. Sometimes I think of James. Sometimes I think of Ryan, but not with a grudge, nor with nostalgia. With acceptance. There are things that we don't change, and others that we decide not to carry anymore. The visit ceased, so are the calls. The phone rings less than it has ever ringed in a lifetime. At first, it hurt me. I wondered if I had been too harsh, but then I realized I didn't distance myself from anyone. I just stopped begging for space where I was only given leftovers. And when we stop accepting crumbs, silence turns into abundance. The other day, I sat in the armchair on the terrace, the same one that no one had the courage to occupy during the invasion. I felt the wind hit my face, as if the world said, "You won," but not in the sense of victory over someone. I won over myself, about fears, about the old habit of lowering your head, about the guilt that so many mothers carry for loving too much, even when they are not loved back. And sometimes they ask me if I have forgiven. I don't know how to answer, because forgiveness, for me, is not a key that you turn all at once. It comes in pieces. It comes in hot coffee in the morning, on the pillow that you get just for you, in the sunset that you watch, unhurriedly, without thinking about anyone else but yourself. Perhaps this is the forgiveness to continue, even after the pain. But just when I thought I had understood everything, that the way now was just to walk, I received a letter, not Ryan's, nor Megan's. Why, thou? From someone I never expected. And what was inside? It was like opening a door that I swore was locked forever. Do you want to know who wrote it? And what did you tell me? So listen to only the last part, because the end, ah, the end tastes like justice with peace, and maybe, just maybe, a little self-love rediscovered. Today, I sit here, now, on Altan and Dr. Chucken, on the porch of my house, when this night and how can you, Leocartero Quadrant, Lidistais, with the sun hitting my face lightly and the sea whispering ahead. And it is with this peace that I close this chapter of my life. Megan and Ryan never returned. I learned from neighbors that they sold their house to pay part of the fine, and that they moved somewhere in the countryside, on where no one knows them. The kids, well, I hope they grow up with more truth around them than they have had so far. Wasunaya. I'm fine. Wanting Tom. I don't need to feign strength or explain myself. I don't have anyone else slamming doors, using my name in vain, or trying to convince me that I lost my reason. I didn't lose. No, I only should have been down. It just took me a while to understand that there are people who don't want love. He wants dominance. And when he can't, how? He calls it ingratitude. But I learned in time. I learned that life, no matter how hard it is, still sews beauty around the edges. We just have to hold the needle firmly. And what do I take from all this? That too much love. Malchus, Lukau, Atachibantasi, when badly distributed, turns into a wound. That silence is not weakness, it is preparation. And what dignity! We don't give this one for a son, a grandson, nor or anyone else. Dignity is what sustains us when everything falls apart. It is the only legacy worth keeping. I raised my son with all the love I had, but when he chose the side of lies, I had to choose the side of truth, even if it meant losing him. And I lost, but I won myself back. Now, Willie, if you've stayed with me this far, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Really, it's hard to open your chest and show those scars. But knowing that you've heard my story already makes me feel a little less alone. If this story moved you, leave me a hug in the form of a like. This warms the heart and helps this little corner to continue. And if you want to come back for another coffee with me, subscribe here to the channel, and it will be good to have you around again. Right here in the comments of where you're watching me, I love to imagine where this story went. What silent faces it touched. And it activates the bell. See? That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. And look, don't go away yet. Listen to the next real story that will appear on the screen. One cow. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story. Ni känns det av, dat det du att over you, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story, because there is more life to tell. And I still have a lot of embroidery saved to show.